Something interesting has been happening in the last 2 days in the Ukraine war. And while it might be nothing, I actually think it tells an important story about the real state of Russian forces. I think maybe we are just starting to see the cracks in their military firepower. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's get into it. First, I want to take a look at the control map, right? And here's the updates of the last 24 hours, right? And a small update near Robtina, right, in the Zaporizhzhia region. And you can see here that we went from, again, Russian control of this eastern portion of the area to a Ukrainian advance, pushing the Russians out of this small windbreak, right? Itself not particularly noteworthy. The other noteworthy update has been over in the area near Avdiivka. Now, one of the things we've talked about is that Ukrainian strategy in Avdiivka is not to repel the Russians everywhere, but to contain the areas where Russians are able to make breakthroughs, right? To channel the Russian breakthroughs into unproductive directions. Most notably have been these two prongs, right? Instead of allowing them to close like pincers on Avdiivka, the Ukrainian strategy has been to force them deeper into Ukrainian territory, creating unsustainable salients, right? But what's interesting is you're seeing here, this was the Russian control 2 days ago, and here is a small retreat of Russian forces. So across the front line, we're seeing Russian forces actually pulling back from the lines. Now, this may not itself be very significant, right? You can see here, taking a look at the control map or combat map, you can see Russian forces launching over 94 combat engagements across the front line. But there's some more details. There's more to the story, and I want to talk about that in just a minute. One of the things that's interesting about getting older is that you put a lot less care into what other people think, and you care a lot more about what things mean to you. And that is probably one of the most freeing things that you can experience with age. And so when I look at clothing or fashion items, I look more at what they say to me and less about how they are thought about by other people. So when Gentle Bands reached out again to sponsor a video, I was all for it, because Gentle Bands makes pieces for men that aren't about the flash, it's about the substance. They hooked me up, for example, with the Rebel ring this time. This is a titanium ring that I love as just an everyday wear. I love the fact that it's titanium for practical reasons, because of course it's super durable, right? My other wedding ring is solid gold, which is super soft, super malleable, easily damaged. So it's nice to have something that is rock solid, and it'll last a lifetime, which is good because that's how long your marriage vow is supposed to last. But Gentle Bands actually got a ton of requests from their users to make chains, right? Because a lot of guys, they work jobs where they can't have a ring on their finger. But I actually asked them to send me the Cuban chain in silver. And the reason is because, if you're a fan, I recently became a dad. And so my wife is Cuban and now my daughter is Cuban. So I have these two central women in my life that have Cuban heritage. So this way, whenever I wear this, whenever I look at them, I'm reminded of my daughter and the legacy that she has. So if you're looking for a Valentine's Day present for your guy, or you just want to get yourself a nice cool piece that means something, check out Gentle Bands. They're actually hooking us up with a 25% discount code. The promo code is CombatVet, and the link is in the description. So again, check it out, 25% off, promo code CombatVet. Thanks again to Gentle Bands for sponsoring the video. These are the details I wanted to talk about here. First off is the fact that, one, this is a lot of attacks, but notice how scattered these attacks are, right? Yeah, there's something of a concentration here in Avdiivka, but even here, it's concentrated along what looks to be a 10 or 15 kilometer front where Ukrainian forces are noted for being extremely dug in. And you can see that that's just a portion of these attacks, which are scattered around Marinka, Zaporizhzhia, Kharkiv, just all across Luhansk province. They're really stretched thinly across the front line. And when we look at the recent post by a Russian mill blogger that said that Russian forces are unable to stage anything other than tiny squad-sized attacks with armored support far in the rear, it says that even though the quantity of attacks may be increasing, it seems like the only way Russia can produce any offensive action at all is to resort to a low quality of attack. That Ukrainian drone coverage and drone responsiveness is now so extensive that for Russian forces, they are unable to concentrate forces sufficiently to take meaningful operationally significant targets, right? You can see here that 1, 2, 3 offensive actions have occurred, sure, in the Avdiivka region, but that each of those is a separate offensive action, likely with a separate staging area, separate support, because, as the Russians have pointed out, when they try to concentrate their forces, right? Imagine a whole battalion trying to drive down this roadway. Ukrainian observation drones and combat drones combined with artillery are so effective that large formations are simply broken up before they ever get to the front line. So I think while you're seeing this quantity increase, you are seeing a corresponding drop in the quality of Russian offensive actions. And I think that's why we've seen for a long time the Russian forces slow their momentum. You can see that the entirety of Russian efforts have produced just a few buildings that have been seized in Avdiivka. That's what they have to show for this. And now you're seeing, despite Russia being on the offensive, Ukraine claiming that it's not really doing anything other than counterattacking. It's not trying to take any new territory. The counterattacks are now driving Russian forces back out from territory they've held for several days, in some cases, several weeks. That, I think, is an interesting sign, especially when it's paired with another rumor reported by Bloomberg a few days ago that Putin may have signaled to U.S. officials that he's open to negotiations, including those that would provide, quote, security arrangements for Ukraine. And that this signal, right, happened around December, which of course would make sense, right? Putin's going to see the lights flashing on his dashboard about his military's readiness and ability to continue the fight before it shows up on the battlefield itself. So I think this is not incompatible with what we're seeing on the battlefield, which is a weakening Russian offensive, an increasingly anemic Russian offensive. Now, I would like to caveat this, that publicly, Putin has said that his objectives remain fully maximalist, right? It's taking Kiev, the total defeat of NATO, right? They're preposterous and unrealistic. And even Russia expert Fiona Hill told Bloomberg that this is part of a Russian ploy to spread rumors that in order to scare Ukraine to think that Ukraine's primary ally, the United States, is not only cutting off funding, but is now wheeling and dealing with Russia behind its back. I don't think, I think that could very well be true, but we've seen in other sources that Russia has been willing to at least acknowledge that talks are possible. And so I think this is indicative of the fact that Putin is seeing he is becoming far weaker, far faster than Ukraine. And it's really interesting because if this is the case, then the next logical step for Putin to take is to pivot his forces into a defensive fight. And suddenly, we may be seeing something that looks more like a standoff with far less offensive action by either side, and a lot more negotiation. Anyway, guys, that is all I had for this update. I think very relevant, very important, and I will definitely keep you guys updated because there are some rumors that there's some movement finally happening in getting a large aid package to Ukraine. But thank you to the Colonel tier members of Combat Vet News, the Lieutenant tier members. I couldn't do this without you guys. Hit like and subscribe on the video. Tell the YouTube algorithm this is good content. See you in the next one. Cheers.